Hey Doubting Believers, I just wanted to share this short video to say that once again, I was reading the Bible and I saw something I've never seen before. Actually, I know I've seen it before because it came from the book of Judges, and I took a whole seminary class on the book of Judges, spent an entire semester just looking at the book of Judges, so I know I have read this particular passage before. But I realized something I'd never realized before. And what often happens when we read the Bible, of course, the Bible does not change, but we do. And the experiences we bring to it, our headspace that we bring to it, our dreams and our fears at the current time, we bring that all with us to our reading of the scripture, and it informs us where we are right now. And God always speaks to us where we are. And that's one of the many things that make scripture so cool. We're always learning new things, even from the stories we think we know. So, this week I was looking at Judges 13, which is about Samson, but so often we forget about Samson's origin story. And so this is really about Samson's mom. And if you don't know the story, I encourage you to listen to this week's Bible Stories for Big Kids. It's called Samson's Mom. It's the latest one. And she, of course, doesn't have a name because the Bible doesn't do that for women very often, but I call her Hazel. So Hazel wasn't able to have a child. An angel comes and tells her that she is. She tells her husband. He has more questions. The angel comes back, talks to Hazel and her husband. Now, her husband, he does get a name. His name is Manoa. And in Manoa's religious tradition, which was most likely, he was an Israelite, he was a Jew. Chances are he was influenced by the pagan religions that surrounded him as well. But in his tradition, he had been taught that if you had a face-to-face encounter with the holy, that you were going to die, that no mere mortal could survive such a thing. So, after hearing all this news, he suddenly realizes that this has been a messenger of God. And he is terrified because you just can't survive that. And he tells his wife, "Oh my gosh, we are going to die." And here's where Hazel comes in and says, that doesn't make sense. God went to all this trouble to bring us this baby announcement / gender reveal party. And said, I'm going to have a baby after all this time, and now God's going to kill us? That doesn't make sense. Kudos to Hazel. And perhaps I have not noticed this before, or perhaps I noticed it right now because I am hearing from and talking with a lot of evangelicals right now. That is what they call themselves. They are people who grew up in evangelical, more conservative faith traditions and are finding that those traditions no longer work for them. They still believe in God, they still want to follow Jesus, but they just can't do so in the tradition in which they grew up. And it's very uncomfortable when you grew up in such a tradition to start asking questions. But here we have Hazel, who took what was people knew from their tradition, what they had been taught, and said, hey, that does not make sense. So it's biblical. That's okay. There's parts of God that are always going to be a mystery. We are never going to fully understand God. But God also gave us brains to use to question and respond when things don't make sense. So if you grew up in a tradition that taught you to love your neighbor, but then later said, okay, but not all your neighbors, well, you can love them from a distance, but you can't be inviting them in here, you can use your brain and see if that still makes sense. Or, like many people are struggling with, they grew up in a tradition that taught them that Jesus said, feed the hungry, clothe the naked, help the poor, and now they have done that. They have been working for justice, and they get told they are dirty socialists. So, when the things you have been taught in church do not make sense, it is okay to question them. It's okay to talk about it. It's okay to work through them. It's in the Bible. Actually, it's in the Bible a lot. There are a lot of people who question God. But I love this particular story where Manoa's wife is like, Hazel's like, this just doesn't make sense. God wouldn't kill us after doing all this. So if there are things in your life that you've been taught about how God works and who God is that are no longer making sense for you, that is okay. And it is okay to keep exploring that and keep discovering who you are called to be and how you are called to follow Jesus right now, in this time and in this place. And I also share this story because I hope it will encourage all of you who think you know the Bible, like me, to go back to those stories you think you know. and revisit them, because I think they always have something new to tell us.